Mercedes has just revealed further details on the upcoming season and what they're expecting. And as we all know, Formula One is a cutthroat sport, and now that Red Bull has held the reins for the last 2 years, people are anticipating their downfall. Could we see it happening this year? And could Mercedes be the team to dethrone them again, like they did 10 years ago? In confirming the renewal of his contract as Mercedes technical director, James Allison was eager to disprove the idea that it has been no fun to be a part of the team as it strives to reclaim its title-winning status. "Actually, it's lots of fun," he said. "It isn't as much fun as winning. That's definitely true. But you have to sort of love the whole of the sport, and the whole of the sport involves taking your licks when you haven't done a good enough job." One of the things to admire about Red Bull's current performance is that they stuck gamely to their task in quite a long period in the wilderness and are now enjoying the fruits of that well-placed labour. It's far from unenjoyable being in that position, as long as the team is collectively confident that it's making the right moves to try to re-establish itself as a force to be reckoned with. There's loads and loads of fun to be had in that. Allison's mention of Red Bull's problems prior to Max Verstappen's 3 consecutive titles exemplifies the mindset required to succeed in a sport with such extensive competitive cycles. Even for a team with all of the required resources and talent, gaining a competitive edge takes years, but once achieved, it typically lasts long enough to set records. The image of a rising Red Bull after years of hardship and a fading Mercedes represents the process of decay, how the energy that has united to create long-term success ultimately begins to fade after it has been attained, overpowered by the ravenous ambition of the next generation. That seemed to sum up the end of Ferrari's dominance in the first decade of this century. Years of unprecedented success, sporting legends forged from the key participants, enormous wealth amassed. And then the vortex of ambition lost its energy, no longer a unit with the tight cohesion of before. Ross Brawn, Michael Schumacher and Jean Todt all departed the fold in short succession, leaving the magic behind and making way for new stars. However, when it comes to the changing of the guard from Mercedes to Red Bull, the entropy model only works superficially. The underlying circumstances are very different. Prior to the introduction of the hybrid power unit formula, Red Bull was F1's dominating team. As evidenced by Sebastian Vettel's 4 consecutive world titles, Red Bull did not lose its force due to entropy. It happened almost instantly in 2014 when the new formula switched the primary differentiator of success from aerodynamics to power unit. While aerodynamics was still crucial, the difference in lap time between a competent chassis and a fantastic one was often half a second, while the difference in power unit was sometimes 2 or 3 times that. Red Bull was powered by Renault, which completely underestimated the difficulties of the hybrid era. Mercedes has its own engine facilities and had spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars preparing for the task. The new hybrid formula was a meteorite that transformed everything, causing a quick and profound paradigm shift that upended the current quo. Mercedes, with its industrial-scale resources, massive ambition, and F1 project led by the clever Ross Brawn, was not going to pass up that opportunity. Red Bull, a racing juggernaut without the engineering strength and long-term strategic view of a car business giant, had little control over its future. Red Bull had not lost its desire. It had lost enough firing power to translate it. The difference in magnitude was physically reflected in the performance of the 2 power units. The Mercedes was practically 5 years ahead in terms of technology, but it was much more than that. The ramifications grew when Mercedes leveraged the large lead times to combine the chassis and power unit divisions. Clever people were given tremendous resources to maximize the possibilities of that integration. On an organizational level, which transferred to the cars, Mercedes possessed excellent aerodynamics and enormous power. Red Bull just had superb aerodynamics. No contest. Even if the Mercedes PU advantage decreased, the aerodynamic path it had placed it on resulted in some fantastic cars. Those from 2016 and 2020 were particularly exceptional. Red Bull's aerodynamic expertise remained intact, but it could not be fully utilized while attempting to compensate for such a significant energy deficit. They were compromised, just as a brilliant driver would be if they were refused access to the car they needed to do their best. Even in the years when Red Bull was able to develop a more aerodynamically effective car than Mercedes, any benefit would be overshadowed by the numbing power advantage. By 2016, Red Bull was designing a car with an aerodynamic plan purposefully slanted towards slow corner tracks where its power shortage would be less costly, as Adrian Newey revealed. Accurately predicting a power deficiency, it sacrificed its aero at tracks where that power hit would be the most severe, in other words, where it would undoubtedly take a hammering. Red Bull's lack of confidence in Renault's assurances resulted in built-in compromises beyond the horsepower disadvantage, as little windows of opportunity were sought. Title hopes were simply unrealistic. And then Red Bull was further hindered by regulatory changes. The new wide car standards of 2017 created a wind tunnel correlation problem, since the data was contaminated due to the larger model's greater approach to tunnel walls. The 2019 limits on the number of undernose guiding vanes, the prohibition of blown axles, and the reduced height of the barge boards were more aimed at Red Bull's high rake/short car concept than Merck's low rake/long car strategy. However, this was rectified to spectacular effect by the regulatory cutting of the floor space for T21, which harmed Mercedes and came at a time when Red Bull's relationship with Honda was developing. With a trusted engine partner, the power and integration developed year after year until it was a Mercedes match. Finally, Red Bull had superb aerodynamics and a terrific power unit. It's game on. Then it was Merck's time to stumble. The new Venturi underbody restrictions of 2022 included an impressive tripwire that only Red Bull walked over. Mercedes still possessed a competitive engine, but it failed to grasp its aerodynamic disadvantage. Allison believes it has finally done so, but there is no way of knowing what progress Red Bull has made in the meanwhile, and it is part of the thrill, both for him and us. "You're not expecting progress to be linear or anything," he says. "It's always a roller coaster of getting your hopes up, being slapped down by the racing gods, and then gathering your skirts again to have another push. And I hope that that journey upwards is steep and strong and secure, but it will be great fun trying to drive it at whatever pace we can to give our rivals a good old fight." And that journey will still be driven together with their starman, Lewis Hamilton, of whom Mercedes claims to have no doubt about his drive to return to Formula One winning ways, despite the team's problems over the last 2 years. Hamilton is the sport's most successful driver, having matched Michael Schumacher for 7 championships and breaking records for pole positions and victories. However, due to Mercedes' ongoing issues since F1 switched to ground effect cars in 2022, the Briton has not contributed to his count of 103 race victories since December 2021. Despite doubts in some quarters about his dedication to the team, Hamilton signed a 2-year deal with Mercedes last year to extend his F1 career. "I think you'd struggle to find a driver anywhere in the grid that wasn't motivated," Allison said. "I think that sort of comes with the territory with them. And generally speaking, the more successful the drivers have been, the more sort of inescapable that compulsive need to win is. In Lewis's case, it's just a core part of who he is, so there's no doubt about his motivation to get back to winning ways. But whether or not he can do that will be much more in the hands of the equipment we've given him than in his own hands. He's always had that ability there." Mercedes is moving forward with a redesigned car idea for its W15 Challenger, and Allison believes it has addressed the spiteful rear-end features of its predecessor. While Allison admits Hamilton and George Russell's involvement will be limited at this point, he emphasizes the significance of the drivers once winter testing begins. Both drivers, their role over the winter is very largely to look after their physical condition, make sure that they're mentally prepared, and just stay in touch with us about our successes and failures as we are going through the hoops of getting the car specified, built, tested, and ready for them, he said. "It isn't really a part of the year where they can have other than an observing role with what we're doing. Once the car is running and once the car is talking to us, the person that is the interpreter is the driver, and then their voices start to have much greater weight, so over the winter it's just getting themselves ready for the new challenge. The big question will be if the car that we'll be seeing in a couple of weeks will be good enough to challenge Red Bull from the start. Surely they would have improved, but enough to challenge for the win in the first race? Probably not." What are your thoughts? Will Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton be able to turn heads again in 2024? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.